If you met someone who'd become disabled, you'd acknowledge that their lives would have changed because of this. They may not now be able to take part in everyday activities or enjoy things that we all take for granted. You accept this and in fact make allowances to make their lives as comfortable as possible and find out what you can do to help achieve this. So why is it that so many people don't have the same attitude when it comes to mental illness? Many talk about not being treated with the same respect as those with physical disabilities, even though the impact on their lives can be just as devastating. Perhaps it's due to ignorance. It's easy to think about what it would be like not to walk, but what's it like to be scared to go out, to hear voices or constantly worry because you have suicide on your mind?
And when I had the mental health breakdown, people used to cross the road rather than come. And I lost my house and car and everything. I had to sell it to pay the tax man. So it was a big learning curve.
Whenever I felt really good, really high or bordering on psychosis, I knew that a shattering drop would follow and I'd be back down that black hole again. For me, the best place to be is okay, and I like feeling okay, and that might sound a bit flat and a bit boring, but I know that if I start to get excited, that it can be dangerous, and therefore I might end up presenting behaviours that aren't appropriate. The same way as if I'm low, I won't want anybody around me. I don't want to communicate with anybody, and I don't want people coming up to me and say, cheer up, because it's far more complex than that. So yeah, being okay, which is where I'm at the moment, is fabulous. It does me fine.
I just couldn't see the point in carrying on. Like, it just felt so much effort. Just like every single decision, whether to get up and have breakfast or have a shower first, was like struggling through concrete. Mine just didn't work at all. And yeah, the sheer effort of having to do another 20 years of this kind of drudgery, oh my God, I just can't cope. And actually fantasising about ways to do away with myself became something I would do most of the time. I'd be looking around and I'd be thinking, could I put is that high enough to put a belt up there, or could I maybe connect to an extension lead and put it in the sink and put my hands in that, or what's the best way of things that are immediately around? And actually, funnily enough, that became quite comforting, because I felt at ease if I knew that there was a really quick way I could do away with myself.
Some days I get up and I don't feel as though I want to do anything. So what I tend to do is put a face on. If I go out, I don't want people to know how I'm feeling. I still find it hard at the moment, trusting men, because I still think in my mind, it happened years ago, it can still happen now.
A lot of people used to say to me, talk to your family, talk to your friends, but I didn't want to put that burden on them.
First marriage broke up, and by then I'd learned enough to feel guilt. And oh boy, did I feel guilt, because I was convinced it was all my fault. But it never occurred to me that not just the breaking up, but the way we broke up was broken up because I was in a mess. I used to spend a lot of my time trying to work out how I could end my life without my mum knowing I'd taken my own life. Because I'd seen the effect that my cousin had killed himself, and his mum had as well earlier. And I knew the effect that had on my mum. So I spent a lot of time trying to work out how I could do it without mum knowing.
I had 3 months off work, and at the time I saw my GP, who said it was I was depressed and I had tablets. But it didn't seem to make any difference. And then I started, I presume, I can't remember a lot about it, I think I started taking overdoses of any tablets that were in the house. My daughter's epilepsy medication, I took that. I know that with my diagnosis, you sort of do it on the spur of the moment, it was on impulse I did it, because I couldn't cope.
People hear voices, and I had a very bad case of the birds talking to me. To everybody else there, the birds were just chirping away. But to me, that felt as though they were talking to me, calling me names and real bad things. It was that bad that I couldn't distinguish for myself what people were saying or what was really happening. That's how bad I was.
New marriage, trouble adjusting, and postmenopause, I've got to mention it. It can be a trigger for either the first incidents of not feeling very well mentally, or it can build and be the next stage. And the need to work, I wasn't earning a lot, but it was still the income that paid the mortgage. And that worried me. I used to lay in bed at night thinking, I can't get ill, I mustn't get ill, because if I had a breakdown, we couldn't pay the mortgage. That didn't help. There were a lot of pressures, a lot of pressures, all around the same time. And that's when I started tipping the sherry or whatever else was around, which was not very good.
It took a long time. It took a really long time to come to terms with the fact that it had been delusion. The first time I was sectioned, because I'd been playing this game of recruiting myself to this society, and I'd been in that situation. That was my reality, and to realise that actually I was mad was huge and devastating.
You might think that's a little old squid, but if you sit there and let them tell their story and listen, you're helping them recover.
Over 13 years I was in hospital 13 times. Never on a section, it was always voluntary, but I didn't feel safe at home. And all the tablets I tried, none of them seemed to work, and it was suggested I had ECT. And I went for 12 sessions that was prescribed when I was an inpatient, and after about 6 sessions or so I realised that my mood was lifting, I was feeling better.
One of the things that I really can hang on to if I'm really low is that it passes, and I know it passes. It's happened before, and that's something that I can really hold on to in the darkest times.
I do believe if I didn't have ECT, I wouldn't be here now. And it worked for me. It did affect my long-term memory. Well, it affected my memory anyway, but as I said to a psychiatrist once, I'd rather have a bad memory than not actually be alive.
The impact it's having now is I actually embrace the fact that I have bipolar. When I first got the diagnosis in 1999-2000, I was absolutely mortified. I thought I was the only person in the world that had it, and I felt very much alone and frightened, and probably embarrassed, really. Now I actually call myself a bipolar manager as opposed to a service user. I'm still going to experience throughout time the horrible, horrible lows, and I've had quite a few in the last year. And I will still have times where I start to feel elated and think, oh, calm down, bring yourself back down to earth. But I've just learnt to accept that that is me. It's all part of me, and so be it.
No, you can't get back to how you was before. And the sooner you accept that, the better you'll be. Once you accept that that's the way you are, then you'll see yourself in a different light.
There's always something positive you can take from any situation. Now, depression is a really hard one to find positives in. It's basically when your body's saying, no, this direction that you're trying to push me in is not the right one, so stop and take stock. And if you can just allow yourself to, if you like, be lazy, it forces you to breathe, and that can give you time to just process stuff in a very slow way and not take too much on. I'm not going to achieve 10 things today. If I get up, go downstairs, do the washing up, do the hoovering, that'll be enough for one day. Enjoy small achievements is one way I can get through it.
At the moment, I'm here, I'm functioning, I've got a whole new interest because of my improvements in managing my depression and anxiety. I have now got, for a woman of my age, a quality of life and interest in life that I never imagined I would have. Never imagined. 5 years ago, I'd never imagined I'd be where I am now, doing what I'm doing now. And that's, you know, I'm lucky. I really am.
Unless you have experienced a mental illness yourself or been close to someone who has then, it's difficult to appreciate how it affects lives. The people who have shared their experiences with you have hopefully given you a better understanding of what living with a mental illness can be like. They have put together some examples of things that were important to them, that helped them come to terms with their illness. Learn to recognize the signs in yourself as soon as possible and get help. Talk to people about your situation. Try and see what is good about your life. Spend time doing positive activities. Find out what works for you. Some find hard exercise works, others don't. Have a healthy diet and try and reduce or stop smoking and drinking. Set achievable ambitions. Be aware that those closest to you are suffering as well.